From the wooded hills of Chilmark, Massachusetts on Martha's Vineyard, this is the Jim Powell Report. I'm your host, Jim Powell, and today we have a very special guest, Professor Alan Dershowitz. Alan, it's great to see you again today.
Hey, it's good to see you. We've done this a number of times now, and I really look forward to it every summer to be interviewed by you.
It's great to be here. And there's so much to talk about that's going on this 2024. We've just had the Democratic National Convention. There are all kinds of things going on with that. We have had, you had another book or two.
Yep.
You're close to 40 books out now?
No, 54.
54 books.
Yeah, and another one in the pipeline.
You're writing every morning,
Every
I believe?
day. Yeah. No place better to write than Martha's Vineyard.
It's a wonderful, rich environment to let your creativity and your ideas flow.
Yeah.
And to put them in balance and then share them with others. And that's always been my goal here at the Jim Powell Report, to have people come on and share their ideas. And I hope people will really ponder and think about things intelligently.
Well, it's very important to do on the Vineyard, because the one thing that's missing from the Vineyard is debate and discussion. That's ended. When I first came here, the Chilmark Community Center would have debates and discussions. The libraries would have debates and discussions.
I remember that.
The Hebrew Center would have debates and discussions. That's all gone. Nobody wants discussions anymore. Now people are canceled. I cannot speak at the libraries. I cannot speak at the community centers. I've been banned because I committed the horrible sin of defending the constitutional rights of somebody that people in charge of the Vineyard don't like, Donald Trump. And so people like Lori David have started a campaign to get me canceled. Ironically, Lori David, who still has a close personal relationship with Bobby Kennedy, who today endorsed Donald Trump. But she has led the campaign to get me canceled. Recently, there was a big event, a Jewish cultural event, and she told people if Dershowitz is invited, she won't come. And she's told many people that if Dershowitz is allowed to speak in various places, she'll cut off funding. So, and she's not the only one. So there are efforts on the Vineyard to stop debate and discussion.
That's censorship.
And not only censorship, but look, I can speak anywhere I want in the world. I speak everywhere. But the people who are missing out are the people of the Vineyard who used to come and wait online to hear me talk at the library, to hear me talk at the community center. And they call me all the time and they say, "Why aren't you speaking?" I said, "Because they don't want me to speak. They don't want to hear my point of view."
Well, it's not good to keep people's opinions and ideas muffled.
Well, they do that. And the Vineyard has become a place of censorship and McCarthyism. The irony is the Vineyard, particularly Menemsha, was a victim of McCarthyism in the 50s because there were a lot of left-wing people in Menemsha. They were called the Menemsheviks. And many of them were victims of McCarthyism. And now Chilmark has become a center of McCarthyism where unpopular views are not heard.
It's ironic. I remember when Thomas Hart Benton and the progressives were allowed to flourish and live, and everybody lived in harmony.
They wouldn't be called progressives today. People like Thomas Hart Benton believed strongly in free speech. And today, the hard left doesn't believe in free speech. It's free speech for me, but not for thee.
Right. I remember, and I read that line in your book, the war against the Jews.
Yeah.
And as I read through this, I could see, and I've been through and I've doubled over a lot of pages, that how bigotry has come in, and it's through a different angle.
It's a different angle, but it's the same old bigotry in different bottles. Yeah, it's intolerance. It's an unwillingness to discuss and debate and have dialogue. And instead, it's my view, it's my way or the highway. And that's what's happened on Martha's Vineyard.
That's a shame because of the causes that led to the Nazis coming to power were first controlling and manipulating media, propaganda, ideas.
And students. And students. The Nazis came to power by taking over universities, the University of Munich, the University of Berlin, University of Frankfurt. And that's what the progressive, hard left, intolerant woke are doing now. They're taking over the universities. Look at what's happened. Harvard, president fired. Columbia, president fired. Penn, president fired. And many other universities, we're seeing The students, the inmates are taking over the asylum. The students are preventing other students from going to class, teachers from teaching what they want to teach. It's McCarthyism of the left, and it's more dangerous even than the old McCarthyism.
Is this about control?
Yeah.
There's a deep agenda behind all this.
No question.
That's off island. It's out there.
Oh, there's no question. But, the island is a very important place because it has so many leaders, people who go back to the mainland and lead, young people, people of all ages. And the intolerance that I see now in the vineyard will spread and will become part of not only the new McCarthyism, but it will become central to what's going on in the United States of America.
I listened to some journalists in England and how they were giving speeches at rallies warning the United States about the movement that's occurring, that's impacting the United States. And they were warning the United States, don't follow the road.
Well, we are, though. We are. And, a lot of these hard left, progressive, woke censorship items start in Europe. They start in France, particularly, and in England, and they spread quickly to the United States. In the 1930s, every country in Europe divided between communists and fascists. There were no center. But we managed to escape that with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He created the center. We have no Franklin Delano Roosevelt today. And today, it's between the hard right and the hard left. And there's no place for centrists in the middle. And there's no place for conversation. Fascists and communists can't talk to each other. It's liberals and conservatives who can talk to each other. But we don't have liberals and conservatives anymore. We've pushed liberals far, far, far to the left and conservatives far to the right.
And that is a harbinger of scarier times ahead, because I know that today, Robert Kennedy Jr., I went and listened as a professor. I went and listened to him in Salt Lake City. He was just trying to get on the ballot.
Yeah.
And the foot dragging and delays that he had just trying to get on the federal ballots around the country.
I've been a friend of Bobby's for a long time. I've given him advice. He's not somebody I would vote for, but he's somebody I love talking to. He and I had an hour-long debate about vaccination during the COVID. And it was a great debate, a great conversation, a great discussion. Afterward, I said, I learned things from you. And he said, Alan, I learned things from you. But we don't do that anymore. The people on Chilmark, I used to go to the Chilmark porch 3-4 days a week, and we would have conversations. People see me on the Chilmark porch. They turn away. Merle Berger pulls his car up. He sees me, he gets in the car, he runs away. Alex McDonald, he won't talk to me. These are people who used to come to the porch and used to have great conversations. People would come and gather around. We would have little seminars. No more. People do not want to hear opposing points of view.
That is not good.
And it's not about parties or social life. I can do without that. I have a great family. Most of them are up here now. It's my 86th birthday next week. So my family is coming up. So I don't need parties or anything like that. But when publicly funded libraries don't allow you to speak, when publicly funded community centers don't allow you to speak, there's a real problem.
I saw a T-shirt last week at the fair that said, put the community back in Chilmark.
Well, I hope. I mean, the Chilmark Community Center.
And then there's a blank in center.
The Chilmark Community Center has been a disaster. They fired people. It's run by tyrants. The same thing is true with the library. They decide what books to have and what books not to have. Books are being censored by the library. Imagine if the shoe were on the other foot. If it were a Southern library in a racist community that said, oh, we'll have anybody speak, but not anybody who believes in equal rights and not anybody who believes in a woman's right to choose abortion, we would all be up in arms about that. And that's what's happening at the Chilmark Library today and in other libraries and venues on Martha's Vineyard. We're seeing censorship.
Yes, I agree. And I'm seeing that as a professor. Yeah. I teach English at the largest university in Utah Valley University. And thank goodness we have not had the protests that other universities have had.
I don't mind protests, but when they stop students from coming to class, if they're wearing a yarmulke
threaten,
or if they're wearing a Star of David, and they can't go to class because of their religion, Something wrong with that.
That's First Amendment. I like it that in your book that you include the documents and the interviews so that people can see what other people have said
Right.
in the media. You include the evidence.
I do, and
This
I've
is
always
well
done that.
supported.
I've always done that. I want to make sure that people hear all sides of every issue. And whenever I write a book, I present the other side as well so that people can read both sides of every issue.
Is it that people are becoming so ignorant of the skill that's involved with being able to use upper level reasoning and critical thinking skills? Is that not being developed enough in our universities? Or is that being squelched by state curriculum mandates?
All of the above. We are not teaching critical thinking. I taught for Harvard 50 years. I never expressed a personal point of view in the classroom. My job was not to teach students what to think. It was to help teach them how to think and help them develop critical skills so they can evaluate other people's arguments. One of the reasons one of my favorite students was Ted Cruz was because he and I disagreed about everything. And it was wonderful to have somebody in the class who had great communication skills and who disagreed with me. And I would always grade students higher when they disagreed with me and came up with better arguments than mine. And, education is not about propaganda. It's about self-teaching.
I love that. Education is not about propaganda. And that's what I saw happening. I taught at Martha's Vineyard Regional High School for 18 years.
Yeah.
And then, like a pot-bound plant, got put out and went to Utah Valley, and the state of Utah is growing so fast.
Yeah.
They have so many companies that are leaving California. Texas Instruments has just invested $13.4 billion into moving their plant and for semiconductor production. Right?
That's great.
Right, just about 20 minutes away. I mean, there's a lot going on there. So I feel like, I'm on the cutting edge. I'm in the right place at the right time.
You're absolutely right.
And
what's
seeing
happening
things happen
in America is that the elite universities are going to become diminished over time. And we're going to see universities that are now regarded as second-tier universities compete and become first-tier universities. Universities all over the South, the Midwest, and the West. That elite universities have lost their status as great universities, and they're getting worse and worse and worse, and the other universities are getting better and better, and we're going to see more equality, and that will be better for all Americans.
That will be, and that's good. I've come back from Kenya, and I'm doing a lot of work in Kenya and Uganda right now, putting in wells, building schools, helping with different organizations. And there are some issues that are very important in Central Africa that are affecting the dictatorships, and that is the encroachment of different terrorist groups. In Uganda, you have Al-Shabaab and M23 that are affecting what's going on. You have the Houthi rebels and in Yemen, and that's on the southern flank of a bigger issue that's front and center, and that is what's going on with Hamas in Israel.
Look, Africa is the future of the world. There's no doubt about that. And while Hamas is doing what it's doing, it's Iran, of course, that's pulling all the strings, and the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah. We're seeing real genocide occurring in Sudan and Darfur and real starvation, and nobody seems to give a damn. Has there been a single protest at any university or on Martha's Vineyard? A single protest about what's going on in the Sudan and in Darfur? Not a single one. Black lives matter, and they matter whether they're taken by white people or black people. And we should be just as concerned with black on black violence. What we're seeing, sometimes it's interreligious, it's Muslims versus Christians, but anytime you have real genocides and real starvation, the world should pay attention to it. Yeah, my wife came back recently from Rwanda, where she went on a trip with some friends to see the gorillas, and it was wonderful. And she met with some of the people there. I wish I were young enough to go with her to Africa. I've been to Africa many times, but when you get to be my age, it's the vineyard more than it is travel.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that she went and she got to see, and for people to come back and mention, the natural resources in Central Africa of oil, diamonds, natural cobalt.
I've done work in the Democratic Congo, and I've done work in some of the other countries of Africa, rich in natural resources that are being exploited by other countries. And so the world has to pay more attention to Africa than they do now. But we pick our subjects. Israel. If it's Israel and people are dying, it gets a lot of attention. If it's other parts of the world, it gets little attention, and that's not right.
No, it's not. We need real news and no propaganda.
Yeah.
But anyways, I as I read through your wonderful book, I got to hear more and read more about what really happened and the duplicity of the what Hamas and what's going on between the Palestinians, and how careful the Israeli military is, but yet the human shields that Gaza uses and the people that were sent in, the Israeli army's coming in, send people over there because they won't attack.
I went to Israel shortly after this. I wrote this book in 8 weeks. I started writing it October 7th when I saw what was going on. I lost a relative in the war, a young 32-year-old soldier who was killed. The second one of my relatives, one was killed back in 1973. And it's so important. I care deeply about the Palestinian people, and they're being victimized by Hamas. They're being used as human shields.
I like that point that you make.
I call it the dead baby strategy. Hamas loves to put babies in places where inevitably some will be killed by efforts to try to kill the terrorists. And then they parade the babies out in front of CNN cameras, and the world turns against Israel. Every country, whether it's the United States or Israel or Great Britain, should care deeply about protecting civilians and make sure that the loss of civilian life is minimized. But the main group that is responsible for that is Hamas. Let me give you an example. Let's assume that I rob a bank and police come, and there's a lot of people in the bank, and I grab a hostage and I start shooting people from behind the hostage. And the policeman, in an attempt to shoot me and prevent people from being hurt, the policeman shoots at me but hits and kills the hostage. Who's responsible for that? Not the policeman who shot the bullet, but the person who held the hostage. And the same thing is true with Hamas. If they put hostages, like Sinwar now, the head of Hamas, is hiding with hostages, and everywhere he goes, he takes hostages with him. And if Israel manages to get him and in the process kills a hostage, it's Sinwar's responsibility for taking the hostage, and the world doesn't seem to recognize that. And in my book, War Against the Jews, I document the actual death rates that are going on in Gaza. How many are civilians? How many are combatants? How many are women? How many are children? How many are the fault of Hamas? And that's a story that has to be told.
Yeah, and you detailed how they obtain that data, how they get that information.
But I can't speak about my book on Martha's Vineyard.
Oh.
Nobody will invite me to talk about Israel on Martha's Vineyard. It's a little like the Democratic National Committee, which just ended. Nobody talked about Israel because it's too controversial.
It's very controversial.
If you mention Israel, there are boos.
But it's the 500, it's the 2,000-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah, of course.
And I like it that in this book, you make the point that basically by just treating the symptoms with some Band-Aids, Hamas does not want a two-state solution.
No, of course not.
Of course, the free world wants a two-state solution,
I do.
and have been preaching that is the best solution. Otherwise, it's going to be all-out war. But I like it that you mention and imply, hey, it's not going to be just Israel. It's going to be an all-out war.
Unfortunately, since '67, I have favored a two-state solution, and I've written about it in probably 10 books since 1967. But Hamas rejects it. It wants one state from the river to the sea with no Jews, just people from the other side, Muslims, and no Christian Muslims. No Christian Arabs. They don't want Christian Arabs.
No.
They discriminate against Christian Arabs. They kill them. They
Mhm.
kill gays. They kill transgender people.
Mhm.
They want a Sharia state from the river to the sea, comprised completely of Muslims who operate under Sharia law.
Under Sharia law.
Right.
And I like it that you have 12 steps
Mhm.
of if we really want a terrorist state,
This is the way to do it.
But
Yeah.
then you offer, and I like this, you offered 6 solutions.
Yeah. Well, I'm a solution-oriented person.
Yes.
And most of my books have solutions. I'm just now finishing a new book. It's a pamphlet. It'll be only like 80 pages. And we're trying to get enough copies to distribute to all college students in the United States who want them. And it's the answers to the 10 big lies that protesters tell in front of the Democratic National Committee,
Mhm.
at colleges and universities. And so, as I say, I don't want to censor anybody. I just want to enter my book in the marketplace of ideas
Yes.
so that the students can have a basis for responding.
Right. And as a matter of fact, you included the document that
That's right. Hamas's charter.
the Hamas's charter right in your book, so that the reader can look at it and go, "Holy cow!"
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, I remember reading the Communist Manifesto when I was a junior at the high school here, and I was reading the first 2/3 of the book. I thought, "Oh, this talks about equality and you know
But
everything
you
sounds
learned a lot
good."
from the Hamas charter. I bet you didn't know that Jews started the Revolutionary War, and Jews started the French Revolution, Jews started the Russian Revolution, and Jews are responsible for all the ills of the world. I bet you didn't know that. But if you read the Hamas charter, you'll learn about how Jews are responsible for all the terrible problems of the world. The Black Plague, poisoned wells. You know, that's been the history of anti-Semitism now for 1,000 years. And Hamas doesn't even blink. It just picks up all the arguments and repeats them in their charter.
Because it's about control.
Yeah.
But a control that takes away freedom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's what's terrible
The last
about it all.
thing tyrants want is freedom and
Yeah.
freedom of thought.
And when I was speaking at this conference in Chicago, the president and vice president of the National Unity Party were asking me, what can we teach? What can we do among our institutions so that we can help be the right type of Uganda after the overthrow of this dictator?
Yeah.
We don't want to just replace them. The National Unity Party is the largest one. Bobby Wine is the head.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been active also in trying to change the governance of Iran. There are democratic people with small d, who want to take over Iran. The vast majority of Iranians want a new government which is democratic and which gives rights to women and to gays and to non-Muslims. But the current imams don't want that, and they use force to stop it.
And they use force
Yeah.
and terrorism to stop it. And I have seen a difference in the feeling of, when you're in the room with certain leaders, depending on what country, whatever country, you either feel fear or you feel friendly,
Yeah, yeah.
that you can approach them. I remember when Bill Clinton was here in the island, you could walk right up to him.
Well, he was great. He was great. And he made a great speech at the Democratic National Convention. I was upset to see his hand shake. He's gotten older. I've known Bill. I had first dinner with him the first year he was president in Edgartown. And I brought him to the Hebrew Center. He was the first president ever to come to Jewish New Year and Yom Kippur services. He did it right here in the vineyard in the Wailing Church.
Wonderful. Yeah. I remember that. I remember just up the road going to Mary and Ted's for his birthday party.
Right there. They kept me up at night because you could hear the music.
Warren Buffett
Yeah.
and Carly
Yeah.
singing
Yeah, yeah,
Happy
yeah,
Birthday,
yeah,
Mr.
yeah,
President.
yeah.
That was a fun night. It was a beautiful moon, wonderful setting, and everyone felt that the ideas were being shared.
But I'll tell you a story. Your listeners will be interested in watching it. So right over here,
Mm-hmm.
across the bushes,
Mm-hmm.
President Obama, 2 summers spent in that house. And for my 75th anniversary, I invited him to come to the party, and he accepted. In the
Mhm.
White House, the Secret Service came, and they made a path through the bushes so he could come. He was going to stand right here and just greet all the people. And I got a call from the White House. Is it true that you've invited Geraldo Rivera to the party? And I said, sure. Geraldo is an old friend of mine. I've known him for years. Well, the president has said that if you disinvite Geraldo Rivera, then he'll come. But if Geraldo Rivera is there, he won't come. And I said, I'm sorry, tell the president, I'm not going to disinvite Geraldo Rivera.
Wow.
So Geraldo Rivera came, and President Biden stayed home.
The rest of the story. I remember
Obama stayed home. Yeah.
during one of our interviews, the camera angle blocked the back, so we couldn't see over in that direction.
Right, yeah.
But yet we heard the splashing in the pool.
Well, you heard the kids.
And you
always,
said, and it wasn't Carolyn. You said, oh, that's Malia.
Yeah. And they built a whole cell tower right in the yard here, which we gave them permission to do, so that the communications could be conducted. But Obama gave me a choice, disinvite. And I wouldn't disinvite Geraldo Rivera. So we had a great party without President Obama.
I'm glad you're staying true to your principles, which is what our viewers and the type of viewers on my show, I want people to have open minds.
Absolutely.
I've worked for different campaigns for Jimmy Carter from the national headquarters. And
I knew Jimmy Carter quite well. He's now 100 years old.
He's still alive, and I think his work on Habitat for Humanity has helped him along. So with all these different issues that are going on, I'm glad that you keep the fight going.
I know no other way but fighting back. I'm never going to leave the island. People have urged me to leave the island. Somebody sent me a shirt saying, I'm on the wrong island. No. I'm on the right island. The people who are trying to censor me, they're on the wrong island. So I'm never leaving.
I can tell you that with my family, I don't want to be proudful, but my family's been here for 12 generations.
Wow.
And so I'm literally connected to what we call the Mayhew Mafia.
Yeah.
But with that are all the connections.
It's great.
Through real estate and how things happen in the State House, and how we've been able to make things happen so that teachers can keep their jobs, roads can get paved, hospitals can get built. All these working together.
Here. Great hospital on this vineyard. Unfortunately, at my age, I took advantage of the hospital on several occasions.
I'm glad
got
it's
a bad
here.
tick bite a couple of years ago, and a couple of other things. But the hospital is fantastic. People who work there are just unbelievable. Look, the people on the island, the full-time, year-round people are great. It's some of the summer people in Chilmark who they believe they're entitled. They're entitled. I'll never forget one day, my son and I were waiting to go to an event, and there was a big line, and we saw Lori David walk. And Elon, my son, said to me, she's not going to wait online. She's going to figure out a way of going straight in. And we overheard her saying, I'm Lori David. I don't stand online. And she walked right in front of everybody else. But, there are people like that on the vineyard, entitled people, because off the vineyard, they're big shots. When you come to the vineyard, everybody's equal.
Yeah. I don't think people know that people like Jackie Onassis, Katharine Hepburn, Jimmy Cagney, all these people, they would come into my grandfather's bakery, and my mother would go to their houses to cook for them and mingle with them. They're part of the community.
Jackie, she was great. I'm not saying such good things about her daughter. I can tell you that Caroline Kennedy, who was very entitled, one day she was seated next to me at an event, and she looked at me and she said, Alan, I'm not an impolite person, so I'm not going to get up and leave. But if I knew you had been invited, I never would have come. I said, is that because I defended President Trump? And she said, yes. I said, but the other person I defended was Teddy Kennedy. I defended him. I was one of the lawyers at Chappaquiddick. Would you have walked away because I defended Teddy Kennedy? And she wouldn't answer.
Yeah, the duplicity and the hypocrisy is something that I wanted to bring out. And I'm glad that you've addressed this issue so well today.
Well, I'm going to always address these issues no matter who the person is. Nobody is immune from being criticized.
Good. That's honest. Thank you for being honest today.
Good. Thank you
Wonderful.
so much. Let's do this again next year.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, good. Be well, be healthy. That's the important thing.
Thank you.
Good.
Bavakasha. Thank you for watching. This is Jim Powell, your host. Read a book, listen to other people. Maybe you'll learn something.